When it comes to theatrical releases, production houses usually negotiate between themselves in order to avoid clashes. Because if two big movies or even a mediocre movie and a big movie release on the same day, they harm each other's collections and no one emerges as the winner. Nobody cares about small movies because everyone thinks that they are not in the race. But we are in the era of digital releases, and it is clear that no such negotiations are happening. Because multiple streaming platforms unleashed a slew of movies and TV shows ahead of the weekend on May 14th. Now, there's a good and a bad side to it. The bad side is that there's just too much content, and despite deciding to watch them all, you will end up viewing the ones that the streaming platform chooses to feature at the top based on the number of views it has received. The upside to it is that the playing field is kind of even, and an indie project has the same chance of grabbing your attention as a big budget movie or a TV series. I managed to watch the ones that were in my radar, so right now I'm going to talk about them, give them the love that they deserve, and probably help you decide what you want to watch. At this point in the video, I usually remind people to sit through the credits while featuring the names that you have missed because you did not sit through the credits. But since there are so many movies and shows to talk about, which means that there are way too many people involved, I will stick a sit through the credits reminder here and just hope that you all sit through the credits. Make a mental note of it ना प्लीज़. उसके साथ साथ प्लीज़ वीडियो को लाइक और शेयर कर देना, चैनल को सब्सक्राइब कर देना और कमेंट्स में लिख देना what you think of this video, of the movies and shows that I am talking about, any movies or shows that you want to talk about, और if you just want to talk about anything तो वही लिख दो ना, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. First up is Cinema Bandi, which is featuring on Netflix. Backed by Raj and DK, this Praveen Kandregula directorial follows the story of an auto rickshaw driver who wants to make a movie after coming across an expensive camera, while the owners of that camera are getting closer and closer to finding it. I love films about filmmaking, especially when they properly get into the details of it. I know, that's a weird statement. But there are so many films, especially Indian ones, that revolve around the entertainment industry but fail to capture the most basic aspects of it. In Cinema Bandi, those aspects are shown so funnily and effortlessly. For example, we all know about continuity errors. However, someone who has never made a movie before will have no idea about it. And the movie illustrates how such a problem occurs. Another example are crane shots or a bird's eye view. There are things that have become very common, but there's a lot of equipment, manpower, and safety that's needed to make them happen. And this film points that out so that you can appreciate film and filmmaking more than you already do. From a narrative point of view, Cinema Bandi manages to be constantly engaging because of a simple plot device called hurdles. They take one step forward, something happens, and they are made to go several steps backward and start again. And it is this churning that builds the bond between the central characters while also establishing the importance of coming together as a community for a project that will put the village on the map and solve a lot of the issues that they suffer from due to the inherent class divide in India. That got heavy, didn't it? Yes, because it is heavy. It's just hidden underneath layers of humor and mundanity. And just when you least expect it to, the subject matter will sneak up on you and make you think about so many things in addition to cinema. And in doing so, it re emphasizes why cinema needs to exist. The Strange House, streaming on Netflix. A German family of three, Sabine, Hendrik, and Eddie, move to a worn down house in a remote Austrian village. They learn that it's haunted by the ghost of a mother who had killed her two sons and then died by suicide. However, the truth is far from it, and Hendrik, Eddie, and the new friends Fritz and Ida have to solve the mystery behind the haunting before, well, Hendrik and Eddie are completely possessed or killed by the ghosts. I think that this movie can be defined as softcore horror, as in, the horrifying aspects are not there to necessarily scare you. I mean, if you are easily scared, then you will be shitting your pants every other second. But here, it's merely used as a backdrop to showcase the contrast between the town's rustic, chill aesthetic and its dark, morbid history. Much of the scares take on a very sad tone once you get to know the reason behind the ghost's existence. On top of that, there's a lot of light-hearted romance and comedy in there. And shooting it with a lot of bright, often unmotivated lighting through the Arri Alexa Hawk anamorphic lenses gave it a modern bedtime story feeling instead of, a story that's going to give you nightmares. Now, as much as I am making it sound like the movie's lack of impact is intentional, to be honest, it has a lot of problems that stem from the script. For example, since the family is German and they are the outsiders in this Austrian village, they are not welcomed by most of the people. Them living in that house is just icing on the proverbial cake. But that outsider versus insider conflict is never resolved properly. There's a setup via the guy bullying Hendrik, there's a reminder, and then nothing. He just shows up to kind of save the day, thereby giving the bully a redemptive arc. What? Talking about the house, the final act. It doesn't take place there. It takes place somewhere in the cave where Sabine works. Why? Why? How does that even make sense? If the murders happened in the house, the hauntings happened in the house, shouldn't they be resolved in the house? I don't know. Well, thankfully, the actors are charismatic enough to not make you think about all that. The score is fantastic, so win win, I guess. The Last Hour, streaming on Amazon Prime Video. I was properly bored with this show. I tried very hard to understand the story, and this is what I could figure out. Dev is a shaman and has the power to talk to the dead before the soul leaves their body and see the last hour of their life. Hence the name of the show. Now, Yamanadu, another shaman, is after him in order to steal that power and change everything. So, the chase leads them to a northeastern town called Mangchen, which I'm sure is fictional in order to avoid censorship issues because there's no town called Mangchen that I know of in the northeast. In this town, Dev comes across Arup, a police officer, and his daughter Pari. Due to his superpowers, Dev then starts to assist Arup in several murder cases happening across the town while falling in love with Pari on the side. Let me talk about the stuff that I liked first, the northeastern casting. Due to the prominence of Bollywood, we have become so used to North Indian casting and the stereotypical use of Northeastern actors. So, to see them take on central roles with the only few North Indian actors playing supporting roles really impressed me. They are given the respect and attention they deserve, and I think it's a step in the right direction in terms of diversifying the geography of Indian storytelling. The performances are good, with Karma Takapa clearly being the highlight with his somber, brooding act. The attempt at handling the supernatural aspects of the story is commendable. India has a strained relationship with portraying anything remotely supernatural, but this web series shows that surreal stuff like a Doctor Strange-esque astral plane can be achieved in a blacked out room with a single source of light and a smoke machine, or an empty beach with a sepia layer over it. However, that's where the good stuff comes to an end for me. The show's biggest problem is its pacing. I don't usually say this, but I think The Last Hour would have been better off as a movie. Because here it feels like they have just unnecessarily stretched it into an 8 episode series. That's why the villain, who is supposed to be this menacing presence, goes missing for major chunks of its runtime. There are huge gaps in the romantic subplots. Since Arup and Pari are outsiders, there are few throwaway lines to establish the insider versus outsider conflict. But that goes nowhere. And as soon as you are about to give up on it because your brain has become numb due to the dull storytelling, a bunch of plot twists and heavy concepts regarding mortality and time travel are dumped on you. और फिर शो ऐसे अब्रप्टली खत्म हो जाता है. और अगर आपको लग रहा है कि मैं रिवॉच करके फिगर आउट करने वाला हूँ कि व्हाट एक्चुअली हैपेंड इन दोस फाइनल मिनट्स, तो आप मेरे से भी ज्यादा पागल हो. Halston, streaming on Netflix. This 5 episode series is about Roy Halston Frowick, known mononymously as Halston, who was an American fashion designer who rose to international fame in the 70s. But then, due to his obsessive drug use and poor career decisions, he lost everything, even the right to use his name with his products. I'll try and keep this short. I liked Ewan McGregor's performance, but I'm conflicted about it as well because ultimately it is a straight actor playing a queer character. I like the production design, the costume design, and the performances from the rest of the cast. Everything else is just blah. There's no flair, there's no style, it's way too basic. And that undercuts so many of the show's substantial moments. Like the show wants us to feel something when Halston is presenting his block print clothing line. I'm assuming that's what it is called. I don't know a lot about fashion. But it is presented in such a straightforward manner that I didn't feel anything. When Halston remembers his past while creating his perfume, I'm supposed to be bawling with him. However, the staging and cinematography is so distant and so objective that I didn't feel anything. During the show's final moments, I am supposed to feel emotional as Halston watches his Broadway presentation. But nothing, and I blame the poor visual storytelling for it. If you're making a biopic, get as subjective as you can. If we need a beat by beat retelling of someone's life, Wikipedia is always there for free. Woman in the Window, streaming on Netflix. There's a woman, there's a window, she witnesses a murder, but then everyone tries to convince her that the murder hasn't happened. And now the woman in the window has to decide whether she will succumb to the gaslighting or stand by her truth. Pretty compelling stuff, right? If you think so, well, you are alone on this. Because the movie thinks it is a comedy. And I agree with it. Look, I love Amy Adams. I love Gary Oldman, Julianne Moore, Brian Tyree Henry, Anthony Mackie, Jennifer Jason Leigh, and Wyatt Russell. I do. I love them. And when they are in a movie together, you obviously expect it to have a sense of gravitas. And I don't blame you. Everything from the trailer to the subject material and even the movie itself wants you to think that it is a serious movie. But when you start to analyze its stylistic choices, you will notice that something is off. I want to make it very clear that I am not saying that gaslighting doesn't happen and that society in general favors the testimony of a man in comparison to that of a woman, and that women have to go out of the way to tell their truth. All that's unfair and that sucks. I'm not critiquing that or making fun of it at all. I'm just talking about the filmmaking on display. If there was any indication that it's going to be the movie it is, I would have managed my expectations. But nobody prepared me for the digital blood splatters on the screen along with the exaggerated camera angles and sound effects while someone is dying. And that's just one example. The movie is always extra, so unnecessarily extra. Danny Elfman's score almost never stops, it just goes on and on and on. And I think I wouldn't have been bothered by that if the sound effects weren't as loud and extra as they were. At one point, Amy Adams picks up an umbrella from the umbrella holder, and the sound of a knife being drawn is played over it. Why? What purpose does that serve? It's mind-boggling, unless you think it's a comedy and it's subverting your expectations with these visual and auditory cues for the heck of it. Give it a watch despite the negative reviews, please. Love, Death and Robots, Volume 2, streaming on Netflix. This is an anthology series backed by Tim Miller and David Fincher that's like a hub for animators to tell bizarre and interesting stories. Volume 2 has a total of 8 episodes instead of the usual 18, probably because of the time and money constraint caused due to the pandemic. Instead of giving an overview of the whole thing, I'm gonna go through all of them and give my brief thoughts on them. The first one's automated customer service. I like the humans versus machines story. I really like the road rash menu art like character designs. The lighting, the texturing, the virtual camera work is really great, and the automated voice giving the most weird suggestions really cracked me up. Ice looks a lot like Zima Blue from Volume 1. It is very stylized. I didn't particularly understand the story a lot, but I absolutely love the whole chase sequence with the whales and how the subsurface lighting made everything look so surreal and otherworldly. Pop Squad is probably my favorite because it is so Blade Runner and Equilibrium inspired down to its production design and musical cues. Despite its short runtime, it manages to capture such a wide array of emotions with the protagonist, or maybe he's the antagonist in this case, grappling with who he is and what he's doing. Snow in the Desert is pretty basic. No complaints about the animation because it is impeccable as usual. The claw simulations are brilliant, the landscapes are so well rendered. It's great technically, but it fails to have an emotional impact. Tall Grass is amazing. It has the now famous Into the Spider-Verse style of animating on twos. What I loved about it is the texture of the characters. They look like they have been drawn on wooden puppets. You know what I mean? Like the skin of the models is made of wood and the paint has dried on it, thereby causing the striations that are synonymous with wooden material. The story is pretty sick and like something you'd share on a horror storytelling night with your friends. All throughout the house reimagines the myth of Santa Claus in a horrifying and funny way. It is stop motion, which is something that I like. It's very short because, well, it's stop motion, and stop motion is very time consuming. But yeah, the final product is great. Life Hutch is the one with the man of the moment, Michael B. Jordan. I think it has a lot of scenes where his actual head is comped onto his digital body, thereby allowing you to see his range. It has some great tense and detailed action set pieces. The story itself is alright, nothing special. I don't know what's up with the drowned giant. I think it has some heavy symbolism, but since it ends with a giant dick, I don't want to dive too deep into it. Feel free to let me know in the comments if you understood it. Tangra Blues, streaming on Hoichoi. Shonjib Mondal is a band leader and a former gang member who is discovered by a failed music composer, Joey, when she attends one of the band's musical performances. She convinces Shonjib to take the second chance that he has given himself and allow his band to partake in the rap battle happening in Kolkata so that they can live a future beyond their neighborhood. Given the success and influence of Gully Boy, I think that the comparisons to it are practically unavoidable. You have a group of people who have been othered by society because classism, and that has shoved them down a path of crime. There's rap involved. There's a music composer who has studied abroad and wants to help them. There's interpersonal conflict. You get the gist. Now, I'll call it cliched, but in a positive way, because what is life if not a string of cliches? And what is a movie if not an imitation of life? It's how you take those cliches and make them your own by embedding your city's lingo, geography, and culture. And that's what Supriyo Sen and Porombrotho have essentially done here. On top of that, they have done something special with this familiar narrative. Don't worry, I'll keep it spoiler free. See, usually in rags to riches stories or underdog stories, we see the underdog, or in this case, underdogs, fighting to break the shackles that are keeping them from reaching new heights. And usually those stories end with them doing exactly that and receiving a lot of applause and cheering. However, it's only the underdog's life that changes, not the world around them. And Tangra Blues makes it a point to show that, probably at the expense of not receiving the said applause and cheering. And unlike every twist in the world, it reshapes the entire movie in a way that when you rewatch it, which you will after that twist, every single frame takes on a new meaning. The performances in the movie are consistently great, with Porombrotho clearly being the highlight. But the range that he displays in the last 30 minutes is, for the lack of a better word, fatafati. Karnan, streaming on Amazon Prime Video. A small village suffers due to class divide, causing them to not have basic amenities such as a bus stop. Karnan, who is kind of the village's youth leader, constantly questions this status quo. This goes on for a long time. But things come to a boil when the police harasses the village elders after a particularly heated protest for a bus stand, causing Karnan to pick up the village sword and set things right. What can I say that hasn't been said about Karnan? It is one of the best movies of the year, and it might just end up being the best Indian movie of the year for me. It's sprawling yet very intimate in its handling of characters. It's realistic yet very steeped in its allegories. The cinematography ranges from being very grounded to being entirely fantastical. And the story sways between being something out of the pages of an Arthurian tale to those from the crime section of a newspaper. But there's not a single moment of tonal dissonance because of Mari Selvaraj's excellent handling of tone. You can argue that the length is a little self-indulgent, but I assure you that you will forget all about it when your eyes will be overflowing with tears during the final moments of the movie. I do want to point out a very specific thing, and that is the portrayal of police. They are way too glorified in Indian cinema, and it should stop right now. Their actions are always casteist and classist in nature because they stoop to such casteist and classist people, that is, politicians. Just recently, the Haryana police assaulted the people of Haryana in connection with the farmers' protest that's going on in India. They will say it's their duty. Yes, it's their duty to punish criminals, but are farmers, villagers, and tax-paying citizens criminals? Or are the ones who are ordering them to attack farmers, villagers, and tax-paying citizens the criminals? So, unless the police as a professional, as a community, is able to stand up for what's right, their glorification should stop. And they should be portrayed as the demons they are. If you need to take pointers, watch Karnan. Watch Karnan because it is an amazing movie, but also watch Karnan to truly understand that the police aren't the heroes anymore. Alma Matters, streaming on Netflix. Disclaimer, shit's gonna get personal. Why? Because I have done engineering. The basic premise of the show is that it revolves around a bunch of final year students from the class of 2017 or 2018 from IIT Kharagpur as they prepare to get a job while talking about the college's history, culture, and more. The little bit of solace, satisfaction, whatever you want to call it, that I received from this show is that IITians had it or still have it as bad as I did during my time at the Sikkim Manipal Institute of Technology. Yeah, they can wipe off their tears with the fat packages that they receive at the end, which only a select few received at SMIT. But apart from that, it's all the same. The food is shit, the rooms are shit, they are as isolated as we were in that hellhole in Majitar. They have the same kind of politics that we had. They are scammed just like we were. What was the scam? Yeah, most engineering colleges say that they will make sure that everyone is placed. What they don't say is that no matter which field you study in, you have to go into IT. You might be thinking that, hey, why can't you go for the jobs that you want? Because non IT companies don't show up during placement. So ऑफ कैंपस उतना पढ़ाता कहाँ है कि ऑफ कैंपस प्लेसमेंट में लड़के जीत सके? तो फिर क्या होता है इंजीनियरिंग? बेसिकली तुम अपने पैसे उड़ा के सोशल स्किल्स सीखने जाते हो। कैसे दोस्त बनाना है, कैसे खाना बनाना है, कैसे कपड़े धोना है, कैसे स्ट्रेस झेलना है, साफ सफाई क्यों ज़रूरी है, दारू सुट्टा का प्रोज और कॉन्स क्या होते हैं, डेथ से जूझना सीखते हो। और ये सब सीखते सीखते बहुत सारे मेमोरीज बनाते हो बस। अब अगर आप ये IIT या NIT में करो तो एंड में अच्छा खासा जॉब लेके जाओगे, और कहीं और से करो तो टट्टी। बट टट्टी से डरो मत, क्योंकि इवन इफ यू डोंट रियलाइज इट येट, द कॉलेजेस ग्रूइलिंग प्रोसेस हैज प्रिपेयर्ड यू फॉर द फाइट अहेड। यही है इंजीनियरिंग, एंड आई थिंक alma mater is the closest thing that has come to capturing the bittersweet nature of this process. इसके पहले शायद से छिछोरे की इम्टोस, 3 Idiots फैंस प्लीज सिट डाउन, और स्टूडेंट ऑफ द ईयर 2 देख के जो सपने देख रहे हो कॉलेजेस का वो तो निकल ही लो। The problem that I have with this show is that after showing all these nuanced aspects, it ends up kind of glorifying the fact that इस process के through जाके you get these memories, friends and understand your truth and who you are. वो टेक अवे नहीं होना चाहिए शो से, एटलीस्ट इन माई ओपिनियन। इन माई ओपिनियन टेक अवे ये होना चाहिए कि बच्चों को इंजीनियरिंग, डॉक्टरी और जितने भी क्लीशे डिग्रीज है उसमें मत भेजो। आई डोंट वॉन्ट टू डेल्व इन टू मच डिटेल, बट मैं खुद देख रहा हूँ क्या हो रहा है ऐसे इंजीनियर्स का। इंस्टेड अपने स्कूल को फॉर विच यू आर पेइंग, उनको बोलो कि बेटर करिकुलम्स और काउंसलर्स लेके आए टू फिगर आउट व्हाट इज योर किड्स फोर्टे, नो मैटर हाउ मच टाइम एंड एफर्ट इट टेक्स। इट इज देयर फ्यूचर फॉर गॉड सेक। उस हिसाब से उसको कॉलेज भेजो, और फिर उस कॉलेज को भी बोलो कि भाई पैसे दे रहे हैं, उसका पूर्ण इस्तेमाल करो और बच्चे की ब्रांच के हिसाब से कंपनी लेके आओ। एक ही शेप के थ्रू सबको पास मत करो। जॉब का सिचुएशन वैसे ही बहुत सैचुरेटेड है। हेल्प देम गेट थ्रू इट इंस्टेड ऑफ टेकिंग द इजी वे आउट। यप, सो दैट्स द लिस्ट. So let me know your thoughts in the comments on all of the aforementioned movies and shows, or the ones that you have watched. Did you like them? Did you dislike them? Did you disagree or agree with me? And if you have watched anything over the weekend that I haven't, then let me know about that as well. Like, share and subscribe to this channel. Stay healthy and stay safe.